Yes.
Welcome to The Know, I'm Meg Turney.
I'm Ashley Jenkins.
Remember when having a season pass meant that you could go to that shady amusement park near your house without getting quite as ripped off as normal?
Oh yeah. Somehow we thought it'd be a good idea to bring that experience to video games, only without the spending less money part.
Yeah. News hit last week that Ubisoft's upcoming MMO-ish multiplayer shooter, The Division, will lock monthly content behind its $40 season pass. This comes out of a blog on Ubisoft's website about Season Pass content, reading, Season Pass owners also receive a set of exclusive outfits and weapon skins, as well as access to special monthly benefits, including exclusive content drops and special events.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like the season passes I remember. Now, while this could just be smaller, non-important events, it's certainly enough to give players who haven't bought the season pass a little bit of pause. In what's become the norm for gaming lately, it means the game's full experience might cost north of $100 instead of just $60. And yes, we know, Australia, you already pay $100.
Yes. So once again, players are being asked to pay the price of almost an entirely new game for content that really isn't detailed at all.
Now, some would argue that if you don't think the season pass sounds worth it, nobody's making you pay it. That's true, but gating what might be important content in a multiplayer-only game like this not only fractures the player base, it's making you buy some of the game's activities, and that's arguably the meat of the game, for another $40.
With Rainbow Six Siege, they detailed exactly what would be included with that game's season pass ahead of time, and while the actual worth of the $30 price tag could be debated, at the very least, it didn't introduce any sort of content that would break up its players. There were no maps locked in the season pass, for instance, and all new characters were just timed exclusives. Beyond that, the changes were all cosmetic.
So come on, Ubisoft, you know how to do this. We've just seen it.
Yes.
Right now, we know there'll be some unique guns included as part of the Division season pass, along with 3 planned expansions, although they really sound more like game modes. Expansions used to mean something, people, titled Underground, Survival, and Last Stand.
Charging $40 for 3 expansions and some cosmetic content seems reasonable enough, so there's no reason to add a layer of separation for monthly special events that cuts off gamers who don't feel like or can't afford $100.
Right, you want everyone playing together, right? That's what having an active player base is all about. Even though some would compare this to DLC content you'd get from a single-player game, it's actually not all apples and oranges. The Witcher 3 is a great example of recent DLC done really, really well, and CD Projekt Red made a point of encouraging players to wait before the game was released to ultimately decide if additional content was worth the price of admission. In that game, 2 fairly sizable expansions that added about 30 hours of gameplay came at the price of about $25. Fun fact, they're also having an international LARPing event themed around The Witcher.
They know how to do life.
It's at a castle.
Again, there was no guessing game there like we usually get these days. We've only recently gotten more details about Battlefront's $50 season pass, for instance, which will include new game modes and new locations like Cloud City and the Death Star, along with an unannounced expansion to happen in 2017.
Now, whether or not this new content makes the price point of $50 worth it for the season pass is up to the player, of course, but the player wasn't given all the facts before asking to put the money down on blind faith.
Pin the tail on the season pass. The thing is, there's not really any worthwhile reason for all the mystery. I mean, developers know exactly what kind of content they've got planned for these games. The reason they don't want to tell you, most likely, is they don't want to give you any reason not to buy it.
Although there have been a couple of developers that have been very transparent, like Bethesda with not detailing Fallout 4, said they don't know what the content is going to be yet, and that's why they hadn't detailed that. But for the most part, absolutely, it's planned well in advance.
Yes.
And if you decide the upcoming expansions aren't worth leaping over the paywall, it sort of borks their entire financial future in regards to that particular game.
Borking is a very technical term, by the way.
It is.
Very professional. I think you do a lot of that in The Witcher 2.
Borking?
Yes.
Heyo.
Since so few details are known about most of these season passes, what happens when gamers ultimately feel let down by the reward?
While it wasn't a season pass per se, we saw how much of a clusterfuck it was when Payday 2 developers Overkill Software asked for players to invest in the surprise contents of the completely Overkill pack. As it turned out, players spent $20 only to be rewarded with a bunch of DLC that many of them already owned and a few skins. There was no refund for that, by the way. They did a lot of things really well. They put out a lot of free content and everything, but then they sort of followed it all up with that, and
Internet screwed themselves.
Yeah, sometimes the internet has a really short memory, sometimes it's really long, but sometimes it's just short enough to remember your last mistake.
Absolutely. And let's not forget Assassin's Creed Unity.
Oh, look at that, your last mistake.
Speaking of mistakes, when that barely functional game dropped, Ubisoft had spent so much time fixing it that they actually canceled plans for the season pass and made the Dead Kings DLC free for everyone.
And if you'd already paid for the season pass, whoopsie, well, you got a free old Ubisoft game instead. I'm sure everyone was salivating over the chance to pick up Watch Dogs or Just Dance 2015 instead of the original stuff they paid for.
At least until you check out the list of that game's paid content. After seeing some of the recent problems that Destiny's gone through, not to bag on that game, but to totally bag on it, it's just had some very high-profile content problems lately. The one thing that's key for the game like The Division is providing regular content for the entire player base to enjoy.
Love it or hate it, Destiny made sure to keep the entire population of its players together and relatively engaged for a few months before releasing its major expansions rather than splitting them up right from the start.
And honestly, if I'm Ubisoft, I'm trying to make sure I do the things a game like Destiny did right and do what I can to avoid what it's done wrong. A huge subset of players who don't want to spend $100 on a game right at release running into a content wall, probably not starting on the right foot there.
Yeah. Again, there's nothing wrong with paying for new content. Games like Diablo III, for example, have made amazing use of expansions to quietly become the 10th best-selling game of all time. No, seriously, it sold like 30 million units. Who knew? But at least tell the players what they are and are not getting. That's the least you could do. Literally. And we misuse literally all the time, but literally in this case.
I did it earlier today. Literally. Well, the least they could do is give me the Beyond Good and Evil 2. Is that so much to ask Ubisoft?
That would be so...
Eddy is so passionate about it.
Look, I remember seeing a teaser for Beyond Good and Evil 2 Beyond Good and Evil 2 years ago, and it looked so great, and then just there's nothing.
Hey, maybe that's the content in Division Season Pass.
Hey, pre-order done. Now I'm on board. So what do you guys think of Ubisoft gating monthly events behind a $40 season pass? What if they split it up and let you pay a smaller fee for just the events? Would you be fine with it then, or should all of that content be available right up front?
To get more scoops on those sneaky season passes, like this video and subscribe to the Now.
Oh man, Beyond Good and Even 2.
Yep, you can't say it.
I can't
You're not
even,
allowed to play it because you can't say it. That's why
maybe this is another one of those like changing of history things.
Oh, like Berenstain Bears.
Like the Berenstain Bears, yeah. It could be.
Berenstain.
Maybe it really is Beyond Good and Even 2.
Beyond Good and Even 2.
We're good and even. We're way beyond good and even.